What is up? Today I'm going to show you how to make a DJ Daddy trance style tutorial, and it sounds like this. For the beginning, we want to make the drums. Got my clap. So all that I've done is I've put some wideness on it, saturation, a little bit of chorus, and then EQing it to put out all the harsh frequencies. And then also I put just a slight reverb plate as well on it. But then the main clap is this one. So this is just going to be fundamentally the layer for the first clap, and this is the main clap. So it's really hard hitting dance clap. Then also for the open hats, short hats too. Marlon Hoffstadt and all these guys, they like to add a lot of rhythmic percussions. So it's all about experimenting and finding something that inspires you. So this is the rhythm that I've got in it. And then at the end of every 8 bars, we like to add a clap just to signal that it's changing into another section of the song, like this. Also, I've got some drop effects going on as well. This is just a crash with a large reverb. So I've just added some compression onto that so it doesn't interfere with the kick, some side chain. And then I've also added a reverb onto that as well, really wet with this one because it doesn't really matter. You want it to fit in the back of the mix, not in the front, so it's not so jarring. You can have all the other elements come to the front of the mix. Those elements are like the synths that we're going to show you later. What I like to do is I put all of these drums into the same drum rack, and I like to layer them together. I like to make the song like a sandwich, right? So you put the main meat, which is the kick and bass, and you put the kick and bass together in one rack. And then you've also got the leads, which are like the secret sauce and the cheese. And then just some other elements that you could add, like arpeggiators and pads. Something you can add for like a call and response would be into another element, those in blue. And so for the drums, for DJ Daddy Trance, these are like the tomato, the lettuce, the pickles, the onion. And this is what it all sounds like together. Let's get into the meat of this, the kick and the bass. So all for the kick is just a standard kick with a clicky transient. Also some saturation, put the soft sine saturator on that, and then EQ 8 that, mofo out, and then put around a 400 to the 500 hertz mark. You just want to put a little dip on the EQ. Always put a limiter on everything. I always put a limiter on everything so that way it just doesn't clip, and I'll know that I'm clipping. For the bass, okay, I know you want to see the bass now. So all of the bass is it's a square wave. So you go into basic shapes, put this to a square wave, put the octave down 3, then set the phase and the randomness to 0, level can be around there, and then put an MG low pass 24 filter on that. Then set that around 80 hertz, resonance to 0, crank up the drive a little bit, put an envelope 2 on that, and you want this to be around 700 hertz with the slope going down. This is how it should be on the filter. And then the amp envelope, it doesn't really matter too much. Also set it to mono and legato for the bass. Then in the effects section, just put distortion, put a tube, drive it up, mix to 50%, and then some compression, set the gain up a little bit and put that on around 50% as well. So for the actual bass melody, the keys in these trance tracks are usually a minor key. So I set mine to A sharp minor, and it starts on the root note, it goes down 1, and it goes up 2 notes in the scale, and then down 1. So this is how the bass rhythm goes. So for the bass rhythm, it's usually just an offbeat bass, but for this instance, the track that I researched with DJ Daddy Trance, he likes to add a double offbeat bass. So this is just 2 of, and then sometimes changes it up, like around the turnaround at the end of the bar, he'll put just a full offbeat note. With the sidechain, I want to show you what my sidechain process is, and it's actually a separate sidechain that's routed. It's not actually from the kick that I'm sidechaining everything, it's from this one right here. And this is just copy the kick pattern, but it's only a short clap. You know what I mean? I label it sidechain, and when I'm going into my bass, for instance, I'll go into this and I'll select sidechain, and I won't select my kick instead, so that way I can have more control over my bass. So for the sidechain of the bass, it's set to 0 and ratio to infinite, release to around 25, 30, and put it to peak. Saturation, you can use the Ableton stock warm-up highs saturation plugin that actually works really well. And then for EQing it, it's just go by ear. I noticed that here, the little bit of resonant frequencies that I want to take out at around the 1K mark. And I also want to put a low pass on that as well, so it doesn't click at all. There are better ways to use a sidechain, but this way works. You can't really tell in the song. The next part's really important. When you're having a bass, you want it to have a little bit of wideness and stereo separation above the 150 Hertz mark. So for this, I use a paid plugin, Ozone. This one's really useful, but you can get one for free. I'll drop a link down in the comments below so you can get yours for free, license, and it works just as well. All that you have to do afterwards is put on the kick and bass chain an EQ 8, change it to from stereo to mid side, and then you want to use a high pass for this. That way only the stereo separation is affecting above the 100 Hertz range, and you can use a stereo imager on your bass. Okay, don't ask me why, like that's a whole video in itself, why you need to EQ out the mid side field on the bass. I just do it because I just follow what everyone does. I don't know. Without the bass, that's what it sounds like in mono, and that's what it sounds like widened stereo separation, and it punches through the mix a lot more. You can overdo it, so you definitely don't want to overdo it. I just like to go on the normal second preset and just crank it up to around 12 milliseconds. This is what they call a Haas effect. So before I get into the vocal, which I know you guys want to see, I'll get into the effects section. These effects that all these trance producers make are reminiscent of the 90s trance. Very simple, it's very clean, it's always just a 909 snare build up going from 1/4 notes to 1/16 notes. And I'll show you. I got a little trick for this which works really well and it sounds really professional. I put a arpeggiator on and then I put a snare on. So to get this, all you have to do is just arpeggiate from a 1/4 bar to 1/8 to a 1/16. And for this, EQ it a little bit above the 1K mark. And also there's a few tricks that you can add to increase the tension of the build. And I like to use one where I just put a saturation plugin on it, reduce it by a couple negative decibels, so you're actually removing harmonic frequencies, and then you increase it as it goes out. Also at the same time, I'm putting an auto filter on, which is a must. An auto filter is a must on nearly any track. My freaking go-to. And that gradually brings out the highs. Also on the end of the track, I have a reverb with just a small plate delay. It's literally nothing going on there. It's very simple. For the white noise, which you'll see, it's not complete without a white noise. So you go into boom, operator. Don't need to change anything. You just select white noise. Then you go rate, Select this around the 40 mark and then increase it up to around 118. And then you also set the amount of how much you want the LFO to affect as it gradually builds up, so it gets faster, 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 and faster. So I'll show you what it sounds like. Instead of using the filter, I just like to use an auto filter because you know I'm like. I like the auto filter. And also, it doesn't hurt to just use a sample. Sometimes samples are good. They save me a lot of time. And this instance is just a reverse crash. So this is what it all sounds like together. And of course, this is all grouped into the one effects bus. And the one effects bus, I always, for the effects, just EQ off all the low end 100 hertz because I just want that reserved for the bass. And like, you'll be really surprised how much headroom you take up by not EQing the low elements. I put a compressor on that FX bus as well, so that way when the reverb swells come into the bass, it's not going to affect and take up even more headroom. And I put a limiter on as well, around -5. This is what they all sound like together. Now, for the synths section, this is just a super saw. This is how you make a super saw in Serum. For this is just a square or a saw wave. Go into analog, put the DS saw and try on, and then select that for both oscillators. Go down one oscillator, and then put the unison mode onto 12 for each, and then slightly G-tune these. Select the level and put around down to 25% on the second oscillator. Then for the filter, put an MG low 18 on, route that, just crank the drive up a little bit, and then you put noise, put an AC hum, it doesn't really matter, just set the level around to 10%. The effects section, add some dimension and some hyper to add even more width to it. Set the unison mode to 4 and then add some distortion as well. Crank the drive all the way up to 100%. Compressor, add a little bit of gain, 10 decibels, and then threshold around 27. And just a little bit of delay in ping pong mode on quarter notes. Next for the super saw, just a high pass as well, some saturation, EQ, put that 27%, and in the character mode you want to select ducking around 58 hertz. If you don't select ducking, then it's going to interfere with the actual synth itself and the sound, and if you want to keep it clean, and that helps duck it out of the way. This is a really powerful tool that I use all the time. Set the quarter notes, and then input, I want to put the echo on and just put the filter quite narrow around the 350 to 1.5k band, and reverb, a little bit of glue compression on it as well, and we don't need to add any widening because it is wide AF. Okay, so let's get into the main synth. This is what the main synth sounds like. Call and response, so as it gets into the... So what I do is I'll put the velocity down on these notes to make it look like it's a stutter effect and gradually bring them up. What it actually does as well is it reduces the envelope filter, which I've put into Serum. So for the Serum patch, oscillator 1 on analog Juno, and select the wave position to 7. Add unison, G-tune, blend, set the phase and randomness to 0, and then add the second oscillator, basic shapes, put a saw wave on that as well. Set the unison to 3 as well, and then G-tune slightly smaller. Put the randomness to 0 as well, and the level of the oscillator. Amp envelope, just set the release to 700 hertz, and filter this to MG low 24, and put the filter to 500 hertz. Select the mini keyboard section here, and this will help filter it as I stutter, and I put the velocity down, it will raise up the envelope. Also for your velocity, put this so it's the downward sloping curve, and set this to mono. In the effects section, EQ it and select a high pass EQ, that is all, and then some delay. EQ that again. Some saturation. Just a little bit of sidechain. Reverb. Plate 1.2 seconds, 20%, 25%. So yeah. Echo. Set it to a quarter notes, ducking again. And for this, I put this around 300 hertz to around the 6K range. Dry wet 25% and increase your input to 9.5 decibels and feedback a little bit lower. So drum bus and some glue compression. So this is 63%. So for the MIDI for the bass as well, as it starts, it's just off beats, but only quarter notes for the off beats. And as it gets into the turnaround, the second section, you add an up down bass, which is a trance classic. This is where your creativity should flow, because I'm going to show you the next bit on how to make killer vocal chops. Find any vocal chop like this. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good enough. So I knew this is an E minor, and I knew my track is in A sharp, so it's already a minor scale. So I just manually go from E, which is on the scale here, and that's 6 semitones below. So I increase that by 6 semitones in the transpose section, and that is already in key. Fade out, I put the fade out range to 15, fade in to 9 milliseconds, and set this to gate, and I put this into slice mode. This is when I start jamming out. I just try find cool groovy patterns. So when you put into slice mode, it will start at C sharp, and this is when and I found this. Some saturation onto this. Reverb. Some redux as well. Just some effects. Sidechain it. Put a heavy sidechain on. This is Ozone Imager, and this is the free plugin that I was telling you guys about. Put the width up to 65%, put the mode into the one mode, but I don't call this the one mode, I call this the super wide mode. It is wide, really wide. I actually layered this with this. And that is the exact same concept, except instead of transposing up 6 semitones, I've transposed it down 6 semitones. So now it's a double vocal layer effect, and this is what it sounds like all together. The only thing I really changed with this was I changed the MIDI pattern a little bit around. This is kind of what it looks like. And I've set the redux rate a lot lower in comparison to this one, which only happens a little bit, and it just adds a little bit more texture and high end and more grain. So this is what it all sounds like together as I arranged it. To add a little bit more energy to your drops, or if you want to add a little pre-drop or something to spice up the track, put your kick in there. So there you have it. That's how you make a DJ Daddy Trance style track from beginning to end. I hope you guys find this useful and you find this helpful for you, because I noticed there's not really that many good tutorials on how to make this stuff, and I love making this stuff, and I'm all ears to share it. So if you guys want to get some more tutorials from me, make sure to just drop it down in the comment section below, or like what you want to see, what you want me to go in depth on, or if there's any songs that you want me to remake. Try my best to make a tutorial like this one on it and give you some more value. All I ask is you just like the video so that way I can afford a better microphone. Because right now I'm stuck with this microphone, but it is a pretty cool microphone that I might keep it. So